here.
You're doing great. I'm right here.
Here's Jack.
I'm right here.
You're doing great.
We're here.
Being here matters now more than ever. As a Tennessee not-for-profit with a mission to serve, we've made a promise to be right here for you today and tomorrow.
If you need anything else, we'll be right here.
Good morning and welcome. Good morning and welcome. My name is Lauren Steedley. I serve as Vice President for Diversity and Inclusive Growth here at the Chattanooga Chamber of Commerce. Today, we want to welcome you to this installment of the DEI Forum. The forum itself is intended to share knowledge, best practices, and data for business, but the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Today's installment is an hour-long conversation on a topic that resonates with members, and that is talent diversity. As I mentioned, I lead the work on diversity and inclusive growth, and our team seeks to advance economic inclusion to build the business case for business, build business and expand the economy. We work in partnership with economic development, policy, and the talent teams to promote best practices, data, and shared knowledge. Today, we'll be working with the lead for the talent initiatives team to build alignments across the regional education and workforce development systems and strengthen talent pipelines to ensure employers have a skilled, diverse, and local workforce. For many employers and communities, engaging diverse talent remains a huge opportunity and issue that many seem to struggle with. Our talent team is working with diversity, equity, and inclusion team closely as we look at best practices and innovative solutions to attracting, developing, and retaining diverse talent in our community. So as we move forward with this conversation, it is indeed my pleasure. I want to introduce my colleague who will be leading today's discussion, Miles Huff. He serves as Vice President for Talent at the Chamber, has agreed to facilitate a fireside chat with an industry leader on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Good morning, Miles.
Good morning, Lauren, and thank you for having me. And good morning, everyone that's joining us. Thank you for being here for what we know will be a great conversation, and I'm grateful to be a part of it. A couple of housekeeping items to ensure a smooth program. Participants are going to be muted. However, there is a Q&A feature that you'll see at the bottom of your screen, and we'll have some time for questions toward the end of the session. If we don't get to your question during the session, we'll try our best to follow up with you afterward. So I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to chat with our guest today. She is not only a trusted resource in DEI work and human resources, but also a former Chattanoogan. She lives and breathes this work every day, and I know that we're all going to learn so much together. With that, let me take a moment to introduce you to our guest, Llisa Prater. Llisa Prater is a hardworking professional and innovative leader with experience in diversity and inclusion, human resources, college career services, and all things people and culture. She's worked in a variety of industries from entertainment, academia, retail, utility, and energy, and as an independent consultant. Llisa has created unique and exciting programming for university students and enhanced employee engagement through new communication tactics. She spent the last 8 years living in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where she built and led a D&I program for a 10,000 plus employee-based organization and co-led a D&I consortium for the city of Chattanooga and as an independent consultant. She recently located to her hometown of Pasadena, California, which is a huge loss for us, but we're excited for you, where she provides human resources and diversity and inclusion consulting services to nonprofits, startups, and the private industry. Welcome, Llisa. Thank you for being here. And we know it's really early for you over there on the West Coast, so we're happy to have you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Lauren and Miles. I'm thrilled to be here with everyone this morning.
Well, we appreciate it. So we can dive right in. And so, Llisa, I'm excited to have a little bit of a fireside chat with you and talk through how we're partnering talent and diversity, equity, and inclusion at the Chamber, but also talk about our community and how we can advance those efforts kind of across Chattanooga and our region. So first of all, Llisa, when considering where to work, what role do you think the community has in talent attraction and retention?
I think it has everything to do with attracting and retaining talent. That goes for homegrown talent as well as transplants, right? So I was transplanted at Chattanooga, and that was definitely something that I noticed a lot of. There were a lot of transplants as well as a lot of homegrown talent. And when people think about attracting and retaining talent, I think the community is everything from the demographics, the makeup of the community to where there is for where to live, civic engagement, safety of the community, resources, employment opportunities, especially if someone has a spouse or a partner where they're living, whether they are transplant or homegrown, just the opportunity for career growth. You know, people work to live and want to have a good quality of life. So when an applicant is looking for a job, they're not only thinking about the actual job responsibilities, but what quality of life can this job provide for them? So you want to feel a sense of community where you work and live. So when attracting talent, you're not only selling your organization, but you're selling the city in which you're located. So that same is true for retaining talent, right? You want people to stay there. You don't want your talent recruited out of your city. So I think it's really important for an employer to think about like I said, beyond just the job responsibilities, beyond just what their organization can offer, but what the city itself can offer, like community, employment, workforce development, what type of events, culture and arts. You know, I know that's something that I started to see more of in Chattanooga and can't wait to hear about more of. But that was just something really important for me. And again, resources could be something as small as what type of hair salons do you have maybe for women of color there in the city, to faith-based organizations and churches and even restaurants. So those are things that people think about when they're looking, when you're trying to attract talent to move to your city, to come to your organization, as well as when you're thinking about retaining talent. And again, retaining, whether that be homegrown or talent that you've already attracted, you brought them, you want them to stay. So community, livability, that's everything, everything.
Yeah, and we recently launched a website, Chattanooga Calling, and I know that that was a huge focus of what we wanted to highlight were exactly those aspects of Chattanooga and why, we believe that this is the best city to live and work and play. But I would love to hear a little bit more about your experience as a former Chattanoogan. What drew you to the area? What was your experience like? How did you get plugged in?
Yeah, well, I moved to Chattanooga, as you said. It was in 2012, in the fall of 2012. I moved for my husband's job. At that time, though, we were just engaged, but he was already living and working in Chattanooga. And I'd never lived outside of the Los Angeles area. So I thought, why not? Right. I'd come to visit Chattanooga before. And I said, wow, this is a great, this is very different than Los Angeles. It's a great mid-sized city, right? Which is something I feel like I heard all the time. Best mid-sized city in the country, Chattanooga. So I thought, okay, I really liked the smaller mid-sized feel of it. And I definitely saw a lot of potential in Chattanooga. I saw that there had already been growth and that more growth was coming. And I knew that the dollar could also go a lot further or a lot farther than living in Los Angeles. So
A little bit.
yeah. And I said, you know what, there's great human resources opportunities, HR opportunities, D&I opportunities everywhere. So I said, all right, I'll move to Chattanooga instead of you moving to LA. So as soon as I moved, I tried to connect with people like me, so young professional women of color, and they actually directed me to the chamber. So unexpectedly, right? I wasn't really engaged in the chamber here in Los Angeles, but that was the first thing that a couple of women that I met told me was you got to get plugged in with the chamber, specifically with the young professionals of Chattanooga. At that time, it was YPAC, but now it's YPC, right? The Young Professionals Group. So I had a great experience. I mean, I immediately was like, hey, I'm going. I'm an extrovert. So for me, I'm like, I'll put myself out there. Let me try to meet people. I have no problem talking to strangers or meeting new people. So I think that really helped in my adjusting to moving to Chattanooga, because it is very different than Los Angeles. But I had a great experience in YPC, and literally any other young professional that I met that was either new to to Chattanooga or new to the job where I worked at, I was like, you got to join, you got to get plugged in with the chamber. It's not just for, I think people think chamber and they think often small businesses,
Right.
right? Small business, independent, but it's so much more. The chamber there, I think it's even more than what they're doing here in LA. I think LA really focuses on small businesses, but you all are connected with all of the businesses, all the organizations. And I think that was a great way, when looking for a job and looking for opportunities and just trying to stay connected. And so that's what I did. I immediately got plugged in with the chamber and went to like every single YPC event. and even got featured in the Chattanooga, I forgot what the magazine is called there. So like at an event, I was like,
Oh,
look at me,
Chatter, yeah.
I'm in the magazine. So that was what I did. But I learned so much about people living in Chattanooga for 8 years, learned so much about myself, especially working in the DE&I space. It was definitely a culture shock that I did not expect moving from LA to Chattanooga. So I ultimately, made the decision to move closer. Well, let me get back for 1 second though to YPC.
Yeah.
I just really wanted to also add that I love to see your programming, that it has continued to grow. As you just said, you talked about Chattanooga Calling. Like when I was looking at your website in anticipation of today, I said, wow, like look at so much more that the chamber is doing. You've got groups like Chattanoogies and your Future Ready Institutes, where you're really reaching back to high school and even get Future Ready, trying to reach to middle school. So I just really love how the chamber brings organizations big and small together, as well as just a community in general. It's more than just, I think it's like the go-to place for me personally, for people. So the chamber was really, really how I started to get plugged in. But I ultimately made the decision to move closer to family after 8 years in Chattanooga, as well as to move to a more diverse city right after having my daughter. So, I mean, I love Chattanooga. Chattanooga is close to my heart. She still tells me, my daughter, she's almost 4, that she's a Chattanoogan. She said she's not gonna be a California girl. She's going to be a Chattanooga girl, is what she told me. So, but I still love Chattanooga, and I just love how it just continues to grow.
That's amazing. And I should point out that we did not pay you to say any of those
No.
comments, right?
You really didn't. You really didn't. That was just my experience, honestly,
great.
moving to Chattanooga.
I appreciate that, Lisa. And you're right. We do have a ton of things going on. I mean, I think our chamber is unique in that we offer a variety of programs, and a lot of chambers don't necessarily do that. And so we really do focus on community and getting people engaged. And I'm glad that that was your experience. And sort of to transition, I mean, and to talk about your journey and where you are now, we know that getting employees on board is really only one small part of the hiring process, right? We're hearing from our employers that talent attraction is their biggest focus. But once you get those people on board, what can employers do to keep employees once they've been hired, whether that be in Chattanooga, LA, or wherever? What are some things that you've seen?
Absolutely. So, as you talk about talent retention, I just wanted to share a couple bullets along with that.
Yeah.
But retention is essentially about inclusion, right? Do your employees feel that they can bring their full self to work? Do they feel valued? Do they feel seen? Do they feel respected? And for those that want to move up within their organization, do they see career growth? So those are things that are really important. So with retention, it's time to put that diversity into action, right? Time to live up to that DEI mission or vision or value statement that you sold the candidate on during the interview process or through your website. Now it's time to walk the walk. So ways in which you can do that are by learning and knowing your employees, listening to them, which I think is always key and important, listening to find out what they want and what they need to feel that welcome, respected, supported, and valued to be their full self at work. So really that time I think talent retention starts with first putting the diversity in action, walking the walk, right? And then next, I think, is employee development. So something that I saw and see time and time again as a D&I practitioner is that most diversity tension or barriers to inclusion were around employee development, right? It's not really around what people might think like race, gender. A lot of the tension and unhappiness, that employees had with their company was around employee development. People wanted to do more, right? Whether that be transfer to a new department, a lateral move, staying at that same level, but just moving to a different role, or a promotion, or even something as simple as going to a conference. I heard so often people just were like, I want to be developed. I want to learn. I want to add more tools. I want to be able to go to a conference. I want to grow my career. So I think when you think about talent retention, you can't just expect that you're going to, bring in this diverse talent or any talent and just leave them where they are. You've got to grow them, and you've got to learn and understand where and how they want to grow and provide them with those opportunities. And if you can't provide them with those opportunities, you're going to have to expect that you're going to see some turnover, right? If you're not engaging and learning your employees. So more often than not, when we think about employee development, it seemed to be the same few people getting the opportunities, right? So you start to see a little bit of favoritism and just again, the same things going to the same people. And with that, there's typically was no communication or understanding of why only the few were getting the development opportunities.
Mhm.
So, and what if there's no communication, then what does that leave with your employees? That leaves your employees to fill in the blanks with whatever they want to determine the reason to be why they didn't get the development opportunity if they've been vocalizing their interest in that. And that can be quite dangerous, right? So you're pretty much leaving them with feeling unseen, undervalued, and underutilized, not included, right? That's the opposite of inclusion, opposite of what we're trying to go for when we're thinking about retaining talent. So I think all employers should have a opportunity, like I said, to really learn and to get to know their employees. And when I say all employers, I'm talking about managers, in addition to people in the C-suite and high level. If you're leading a team, you need to know your team,
Mhm.
right? You need to know what they're capable of, where they have opportunities, how they can grow, where they want to grow, and let them weigh in on that. Like as a leader, you shouldn't be the one determining someone's career growth only. They need to be a part of that conversation as well. I think it's also important for employers to have a diversity demographic breakdown of their succession planning. A lot of times we hear when we talk about diversity, talent diversity strategies, people are really focused on recruitment. But again, retention, employee development is really key. So for me, that's something I always ask. Unfortunately, I was never really given that opportunity to see, but I'm like, this is, to me, that's the next step. That's showing that you're a little bit more committed to inclusion and really getting to know your employee base, is if you're telling me what's your diversity of your bench strength. Like, who do you have listed on there as high potential? Who do you see as, needs work, worthy improvement? And who do you see as maybe a problem, and why? And I think it's really important. There's so many stories that can be told by looking at that, not only just the overall view of what your bench strength is, but you might be able to start to peel back layers and identify trends in certain leaders. You might
Mhm.
start to see that some leaders have a little bit of a bias,
Right.
which is really, really important. And that's what you really kind of want to dig through this work, as well as who's not really sold or bought in.
Mhm.
Who is going to be impacting the progress of your strategy, of your program, of your work. So, that's really how we can see in action, right? That's really how you can see your diversity in action, is through employee development, through things like looking at a diversity breakdown of your succession plan. So, like you said, you can hire people all day long, but how are you cultivating that diverse talent? Are they coming in and leaving, or are they moving up? So, and if they're, where are they going, right? Also, a great way to look for patterns, I think, and how, like I said, it's a great way to look for patterns in how leaders view their diverse talent. So, knowing your people and what they need is key and crucial, when we think about that, and more ways for the diversity in action. And of course, right, all the diversity stakeholders. When we think about retention, you want to engage employees in the diversity inclusion program, or whatever it is that you're doing around DE&I. So, I mentioned at the start of this, building a sense of community was important for attracting and retaining talent. And here's how you start to build that sense of community: through groups, through D&I stakeholders, such as employee resource groups, diversity inclusion councils, an executive diversity and inclusion council, advisory groups, inclusion teams, right? Not only will these groups help you build a sense of community, but they'll also bring education and awareness to different employee groups within your organizations, as well as be key players in enhancing your brand in diverse communities, providing development opportunities, right? Letting an employee, an individual contributor, or whoever lead a ERG is a great way for people to test out their leadership skills, right?
Absolutely.
Without any
Definitely.
loss of the
Yep.
organization. So that's a great way to start growing talent, is by letting them get engaged with this, with these types of stakeholder groups, and letting them take on leadership roles or committee lead roles, whatever it may be. Stakeholder groups like this also provide strategic direction for an organization. And it's also a great way to tap into your employee base. If you want to get a pulse on the employee base, talk to an ERG group, right? Go to a meeting, talk to a leader, get really engaged. I think when you're thinking about retaining talent, again, retention is really about inclusion. So
Mhm.
ways in which you can make your employee base feel welcome, respected, supported, and valued is to walk the walk, help them grow their career the way in which they want to, and engage them in activities and events and things around D&I, like these stakeholder groups, right? People don't come to work to just sit at their cubicle all day. I mean, sure, they're there to do their work, but they're also there to learn and to grow. And people don't feel great. There are some people that maybe just want to come and sit at the cubicle all day,
Right.
but that's
But a lot of the general population isn't satisfied with that. Yeah.
yes, exactly. So that was good. So that's in the minority there, but that is, I think that's the best way when we talk about how you can retain the talent, the diverse talent that you're trying to attract.
And I think what's important there, I mean, two things. One, when we were prepping for this event, I told you that I had never really heard anyone float the idea of looking at your succession plan and looking at the diversity that's included in that group of people. I think often when we think about DEI, we think about that just in terms of current employee base, right? So it's kind of a measurement. Where are we? But, we look at diverse hiring trends, how are we targeting diverse populations for hiring? But that leadership aspect of it, I think, is so huge, because you're not just looking at what your workforce is going to look like in 5 years. You have to think about, your manager level and above, really, like, what is that also going to look like? Because if we're doing great in engaging diverse populations and getting them on board at a company, sure, that's great, and that's a best practice. But if the leadership team looks, thinks, sounds, believes the exact same way, you're still missing the mark on that. So I think that that's huge, and I've never heard anyone say that. And I think the other thing that you said that really resonated with me, and having been at a larger employer and led an employee resource group, those leadership opportunities are huge opportunities for individual contributors that don't cost the company anything in terms of giving them those opportunities, right? So it's these free but powerful tools where you can, I can look at you, Llisa, and say, I think that you would be great at this. And it's a volunteer thing. It's an addition to the workload that you're carrying, but the satisfaction and sort of development opportunities that gives you is huge. And so I think if employers can think around that development piece and how are we getting creative and elevating those people that we know have a passion for this type of work and getting them plugged in, it's amazing. And I think it can be life-changing for people when they have that opportunity.
And I want to say that when you select people to lead a group like this, and an individual contributor and their colleagues, their peers see them, they start to get motivated as well. Right. And they start to think, wow, they start to think differently about the organization if they hadn't really seen it in the most positive light, or if they hadn't seen opportunity for them. And so I think that's so important. I think it's important to get people of influence, right, that also have the passion. Influence in the sense that they really know their colleagues, their peers, and they can get them also sold and bought on, because you want to get as many people on this DE&I train as possible, right? And you're going to get people through others.
So we've touched a little bit on talent development in terms of, kind of existing talent development within an organization, but a huge passion of mine, just because this is a lot of the work that my team does. You mentioned, we start working with middle schoolers and high schoolers to get early career exposure and really develop a talent pipeline. That's one of our big goals at the Chamber. It's one of the big goals of my team, and why we're partnering with Lauren and the DEI team. So in terms of talent development, we know it's a major focus. But can you share with us your thoughts on talent development, specifically in terms of diverse talent? So when we're thinking about talent development, engaging young people and letting them see the career pathways that exist in our community, what are your thoughts on that? What are best practices? And just share anything that you have.
Yeah, when I think about talent development, absolutely. So put together like just a few things about just kind of some nuts and bolts, I think, around hiring, or around developing talent, or around attracting talent. So I think that when you're thinking about talent development, it's so important to have an overall strategy in place. And so not just sort of I think a lot of times we might see some employers just kind of rest on their laurels, right? About, this is our reputation, this is who we are, how we've been seen. So let's just post it on our website and see what we get. But when you're thinking again about trying to diversify your talent pool, diversify your organization, as well as you said, for those that are coming up next, to show a diverse bunch of professionals, or just people, experienced professionals, skill sets, trades, etc. You want to make sure that you have a good strategy in place. And so I think it's important to, first, for any organization to, when you're thinking about nuts and bolts of hiring, to outline what your DEI vision is and how that diversity recruiting strategy, or that talent development strategy, will contribute to sustainability and achieving that vision. So you've got to really start thinking about your communication strategy and your brand. So as we started at the start of the conversation about community and things like that, we've just got to think about who are you as an organization? What's your brand? How are you viewed in the community? Are people going to see you as a great place to work? Are they going to see value in your organization? So just really thinking about who are you? What does your website even look like, right? That's the first place people are going, especially to look at your leadership team. Right. So, all right, let me see under this About Us team page. What's it looking like? Uh-oh, everybody's like 60 plus white male, maybe not for me. So, that's something to really think about, but that's important. So just thinking about your brand and your communication strategy, and then as well, identifying key players. So when you're thinking about talent development, thinking about attracting talent, it's really important to think about who's going to be a part of that, who's going to be helping you as an organization to be successful in finding that talent. And so typically, you've got your recruiters, your talent acquisition team, hiring managers, and I think it's also important to include potentially an HR generalist or an HR business partner, right? Someone else that will be a part of the conversation, and anyone else that you think is important to be a part of that. And then really define those roles clearly. So how is everyone, all of those key players, how are they going to help in recruit, retaining, and developing a diverse workforce, right? So we want to think full cycle recruitment. So, and beyond. Let me say that, full cycle recruitment and beyond when we think about talent. Because what you're saying, it's more than just talent attraction, it's talent attraction, cultivation, development, it's all of these things. And so it's really important to think about who those people are and what roles they have, as well as creating specific identifying recruiting strategies for the type of role that you're recruiting for. So maybe that's a college level intern or recent grad, maybe it's an individual contributor role, maybe it's an experienced professional, or even a leadership role. So I think it's important to think about that. And I think that really another piece in adding an HR generalist or an HR business partner to part of the overall talent development strategy is because they can also help to identify potentially some internal talent. Right? Because they've got access to the succession plan that someone on the talent acquisition team does not have. So a lot of times people look externally, but again, going back to my point about what is the diversity of your bench strength, what does your succession plan look like? You might already have some untapped talent there within your organization and maybe look to post internally versus externally or simultaneous posting. Then I think it's important to think about sourcing, right? As I said, you can't always rest on your laurels of what you perceive your organization's brand or reputation to be, right? Because perception is reality, and not just your perception, maybe not how people that are going to be applying or the talent you wish to bring in might view it. So you've got to do more, like I said, than just post on your company website. If you're trying to cast a wide net, you need to get a diverse pool of talent. So, think about maybe identifying some diversity tools, some job boards, career events, conferences, and professional organizations to source diverse talent and to build your brand. As well as, I know now it's just all about sourcing. People are hiring full-time sourcers to do that work for them, right? So that the recruiter or the talent acquisition consultant or whatever the title is for them can focus more on what that relationship with the hiring manager and kind of looking through for top talent. But LinkedIn keyword searches are also important, right? And I think it's important to have pictures visible for your LinkedIn. I've been working with some employers who thought that to have a great, fair hiring process, they should turn off all the pictures in LinkedIn. And I'm like, you're just hurting yourself. You're just making it even harder for yourself. If you can't even see the photos of the people, if people are putting the picture up, take advantage of it to look and see if they physically are or seem to appear to be diverse talent.
Visible diversity matters. I mean, it's not the only type of diversity, but it absolutely matters.
You can try to see age, gender, different things, but otherwise you're going to make it harder, and your keyword searches are going to have to be centered on specific professional organizations or affiliations that someone might have to try to tap into some diverse talent. So that could just be a little bit more challenging. And I think it's also important when you're thinking about sourcing to develop an employee referral program, right? Incentive, like refer people, they get hired, you get $500. Boom. Let me tell all the people I know, I want this money. What do people think?
I will gladly post that job description, right?
Yes, I'm going to circulate that within my network. So those are things to think about. And one thing that I actually used to do with the ERGs and the inclusion teams was I would send them a list of all the external job postings, have with the links already, and have them send it to their friends. I'm like, here you go, every week, these are the new jobs, send it out to anyone you know. I started doing the work for them. We didn't have an employee referral program, but they were also motivated about trying to diversify the talent pool. So yeah, that's another thing, make it easy for them. And also thinking about talent development, inclusive job descriptions and interviews. So there are tools out there in which you can actually plug in your job description to see, is it inclusive, right? When we
Really?
think about the different terms that you're using, does it come off as, heavy male, female? What is it? Does it seem like this is a job that anyone can apply for? Because people will read a job and think, oh, that's not me. And it may just be subtle words, and not necessarily just, pronouns, but just different words or ways things are phrased that maybe in our mind or a filter we kind of pass through as a job for men, job for women, things like that. And so there are tools out there in which you can look and identify ways to make your job description more inclusive. Also thinking about inclusive interviewing, right? So let's think about how you can diversify the interview panel, right? Diversify maybe by race, age, gender, level within the company, cross-functional, responsibilities, ensuring interview panelists are selected before candidate resumes. So that's one thing that I also saw. Sorry, I just got so much. I'm just throwing out there like,
No, I love it. I'm eating it
but
all up. Bring it.
but something that hiring managers can stack the deck in their favor when we think about talent and hiring. And so, right, they tell their friends to apply. They know the day the job's going to be posted. They know their company's only going to post it on the website, not maybe do more. So that's when, and then they don't determine, or they select who's going to be on the interview with them after they see all the resumes. Again, so you're selecting people that you know are going to co-sign the decisions that you're pretty much, or have the same like mind view, right? So that's not fair. So I think when we're also thinking about inclusive interviews, a hiring manager needs to have all of their interview panels selected, sent to the talent acquisition team before they even see a resume, right? Like, this is who's going to be on our interview, and select the questions as well. So I think it's important also for talent acquisition to maybe to develop a bank of questions, rather than letting maybe a hiring manager or just coming up with questions before, or hopefully, Lord, people are not doing it on the fly, but they might.
Depends on
But
the size of the company, though, right? I mean, that's the other
exactly.
factor that you have to consider. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the questions don't have to be the behavioral, but tell me about a time when, they can be more conversational. I think that when you have conversational interviews, you learn more from people, and that they're willing to share more. So those are things to really kind of think about. I have a million more things about diverse interview, uh, inclusive interviews, but I will save that for another time, because I do want to also talk about diversity slates. So it's important as well, when you think about talent development, have a diversity slate. This is for internal and external job postings, or any sort of talent you're looking for. So how will you know your strategy is successful, your diverse talent strategy is successful, if you're not tracking your progress every step of the way? So you need to be able to capture the diversity of the applicant pool, the diversity of the candidates that you send to the hiring manager, who's interviewed and who's hired, right? That will tell your story. Did that external job board work? Were people coming from employee referrals, like, right? Because you want to give people the option as well to select how they heard about the job when you're thinking about the actual application process. So that will start to tell you more of what's successful, what's working, maybe some things you can change in your strategy, as well as it can also tell you a story, again, maybe about success, opportunity, and exposed potential bias.
Mhm.
Again, right? So going back to that, thinking about how we can expose any potential bias, or how we can learn and grow in those strategies. So applicant tracking is key, right, to capture data, and a diversity slate is a great way to do that. And a great way also, I think, for talent acquisition folks to have conversations with hiring managers. Again, a lot of people want numbers, right? They want stats. And so it's like, okay, if I sent you a pool that was 50% female, and you're not interviewing any females, what's going on? This is what you told me you were looking for in terms of talent. This is what I found. Why didn't you interview any females?
Yeah.
So, right, you can start open the door to have those types of conversations, to dig a little bit deeper. And of course, unconscious bias in hiring as well is something that always needs to be thought about. So there's a lot of unconscious bias in hiring, and it's important for every key player, right, that I talked about, whoever's part of this overall strategy for identifying this talent. It's important for every key player to know that the focus and the goal is on culture add, not culture fit,
Mm.
right? So if your focus is culture fit, then you're never going to diversify your organization. It's just going to be copy, paste, repeat, right? Copy, paste, repeat over and over and over. And it's just going to be the same organization. You're not going to grow. It's not going to be a great place to work potentially, and there'll probably be a lot of turnover.
Mm-hmm.
or you'll miss opportunities in terms of decisions that could be made or ideas that could have grown without having different people at the table. So I think it's important to take a look at that and to think about what is your business unit or that department, what are they missing? What would be the culture add to the team? Not about let me find another, another Sarah, another Tony, whatever. We've already got them. We need something different. And so I think that's really important for people to think about. And throughout all of this, when we think about talent development and what that strategy would look like, it's so important to make sure that whatever that strategy is rolled out clearly to hiring managers. Because more often than not, they're going to go back and try to blame talent acquisition for whatever maybe didn't work out. And I think if you start out with identifying those key players and defining the roles, everyone has a clear understanding of what the goal is, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, and can't really kind of get into that blame game. So I think that's really important. And another key player role that I forgot about that you may want to consider is maybe someone from the onboarding team. Whatever that looks like, right? Because once they pass hands from talent acquisition, they're going to onboarding, and they're going to start their new hire experience and joining the organization. So I think it's important to include them as well and to think about how can you continue or start the DEI conversation for people beyond whatever they heard in the interview. Start that in their experience from the minute you're helping them to onboard and they're starting. So that's just kind of my nuts and bolts.
Well, it's amazing.
Wow.
One, no, I mean, it is a lot, but a couple of things I would say. I think that, when you were talking about, if you're doing panel interviews throughout the hiring process, I think that there is this sort of historical mindset that it's the hiring manager and it's the talent acquisition people. And like, that's it, that's all we need. Right. But there's been a shift away from that. Like I'm currently assisting with some interviews for one of our community partners as an external interviewer. And I think that idea to me was really interesting because, this person, like you were saying, once they're onboarded, they're going to have to turn right around and work with internal and external customers that may have not been a part of the hiring process. And so I think that also lends itself to the culture add idea. I think that the idea of a culture add versus a culture fit can be scary at times, especially if you're a small to mid-sized employer, because there's more risk in the ad, right? You're more likely to get someone who's going to push back on what are perceived as cultural norms, as this is how things have always been done, that sort of mentality. And so you have to have a leader and a leadership team that's, wanting to think forward on that. But I think that that's where assessment tools and others that you're using to assess candidates, that's where they can really come into play. Like you were saying, like, don't hit copy and paste, right? Like we need somebody whose gaps are going to fill in, or whose strengths are going to fill in the gaps that may exist on our team. And I hope that we're getting there. I think that, that was not always the case, but with the focus that we have on diversity and inclusion, I feel like that's something that we're thinking about more proactively.
I love that you were part of an interview panel as a community partner. I think that's really a great idea. And I think that's really important when you're looking to hire leadership roles as well too. Like when we think about VP and above, I don't think it should just be people at that level. I think it should be community partners. I think it should be ERG leaders.
Yeah.
I think it should be different, stakeholders within that, because they're going to weigh in and give you a different view than, whoever's going to be their peer. So I love that.
Well, and before we move on to the next question, I will say that we are almost to the Q&A section. So participants, if you have questions, I see one in the chat that we'll get to, but feel free to go ahead and start generating those questions as we're moving forward. But Llisa, I don't want to I know that everything that I've talked about over the past 18 months is about COVID, right? And about the pandemic. And so I don't want to be entirely COVID heavy, but I have to ask, what impact do you think the pandemic has had on talent strategies, engaging with diverse talent? And, what have you seen to be a major motivating factor for employees on sort of this end of COVID?
Yeah, COVID has just changed everything.
Everything.
Not only your daily life, again, talk about my daughter. She's like, did we not wear masks before? I'm like, right, you didn't.
Yeah,
you didn't.
It's new. Yeah.
Really? You know what I mean? Like just our everyday life. I think COVID has also just changed the way in which people view themselves and which they view the world, and especially the way in which they view work. because along with COVID came a lot of other social justice issues being, I don't want to say exposed because they were already there, but kind of spotlighted again.
I mean, elevated, yeah, spotlighted, yeah.
Spotlighted in a new way within our country. And so it's a huge impact. So right now it's an applicant's market. It is, I mean, really, and I will say honestly, like, and just personally, as a woman of color, and I know my other friends of color feel the same way, despite all that's happened with COVID, we feel a little bit more empowered, right? I think people also start to see like life is short. I mean, things can change in an instant, and you've got to really do what you want to do, and you've got to feel great about what you're doing. Like, you want to feel good every day. Right? You might go back and quarantine again with a 3-year-old. So you've got to take the chance that you can get to do what you want to do. So I think it's important for employers, large and small, any size, to know that this is an applicant's market. And you have got to sell yourself. You've got to sell your community. You've got to do all of it. As I said, people have a renewed sense of self. And also, for those that maybe, I know a lot of people, right, change their jobs during this time, just really exposed so much. We've all been under so much pressure, so much stress, so many just different unpredictable things happening. And I think it's really important to think about that. And that although maybe the experience that you're having might be like, this is great, I can't wait to go back to work. That's not everyone's experience.
Not everyone, absolutely.
Right? Again, back to the first thing, listen and know your employees. One of the first things I said, right? You need to listen and know your employees. For people of color, some of them have enjoyed working at home, right? They're free from microaggressions. You don't have to deal with that, right? Because we're hearing people start to put together return to work strategies, which are probably going to be blown up with this, and another variant that might be coming. Like, we're just going to stay inside forever. But
I live in my dining room now. I've accepted it. It's fine. Yeah.
Yes. That's where I am as well, if I take off my filter here, or my background. But I think it's important for employers to realize that. So, right, again, if I've been working remote from home and you're trying to talk to me about whatever the return to work strategy is, why do I want to come back? Right? If it wasn't a great place to work in the first place, if it wasn't an inclusive environment, I've enjoyed not having to deal with microaggressions. I've enjoyed not maybe, when I'm saying I just mean kind of proverbial everyone, not having to commute to work. Or for some people, worry about childcare, right? You've just been online schooling it or whatever it might be, having some family come over and help, but there's less for you to worry about when all you have to do is worry about getting out of your bed, putting on some type of shirt or something people can see from the top up, right? And then just sitting there and working throughout the day. I think it's also important to think about, I think when I think about some of these return to work strategies and what I'm hearing out there is that some of the messaging for return to work can be tone deaf. And again, not considering the varying experiences that people have had to date in the pandemic or what they've gained from the pandemic, right? I know we talk a lot about things that we've lost, but people have gained a lot in terms of connections with family, sense of self, and just so many things have come, right? The good and the bad with this experience. So employers, I think, should also.
Oh, I think Lisa froze.
Saying about, your organization, right? So
You're good. You're back.
See, as I said, this is what happens when you don't have EPB.
I know we talked about that. We'll plug EPB in a second. Absolutely. No, you're back. You were only gone for a couple of seconds. Okay. You were talking about the tone deaf messaging return to work and how that's, when people are messaging that, it's not taking into account all of the things that people have experienced throughout the course of the pandemic. Oh, and she's frozen again.
I was frozen again, this time longer.
You're good.
See, AT&T is not
there. You go. There you go. I'll let you move forward.
Literally leaving EPB was something that we talked about. Was like, oh, we're not going to have EPB internet. And okay, I'm sorry, but
you are fine.
Again, EPB didn't pay me to say that, but it's serious. But okay, I'll end this really quickly. But so I think so we're potentially looking at two different types of work cultures or work experiences. One for people that are going to return to work and one for people that are going to work remote. So that's something employers need to think about is, are you going to have two different types of workforces, and how are you going to engage them? How are you going to make sure they have, a great work experience? What is that? And so just keeping in mind, just thinking about that, employers need to be innovative and listen to their workforce and think about that. So I've been hearing a lot about, DEI not necessarily even having a seat at the table with this return to work discussion. And I think
Wow.
that's a miss. I think that's a miss.
Absolutely, yeah.
For a lot of employers, it shouldn't just be, like C-suite. If you don't, even for some companies that do have chief diversity officers, they haven't been included in the conversation. And just companies in general, like, you need to be including whoever is focused on your people beyond just like your HR leader. You need to include them, right? Because this is going to be telling your employers, how inclusive is your environment? Are you willing to listen to the changes that I've been going through from this pandemic, the type of work environment I want to be in, the type of career I want to have? Or are you just going to try to push things back to how they were before the pandemic, which things will never be the same?
Never.
You've got to pivot, you've got to evolve, you've got to change. So there really needs to be a focus on purpose, culture, brand, and employee experience, right? What is diverse talent looking for an employer? So, I mean, everything's just changed. It's just different. And I think these are things that employers need to think about when they're trying to put together their diverse talent strategies.
Yeah. Well, and I think a couple of things, we do have a couple of questions that I do want to get to, but I think the first time I heard you say the freedom from microaggressions, I was mind blown, because I think that that's something that so many of us have not thought about throughout this, is that working from home has been difficult for so many, and there have been challenges, and I won't take away from that. But I think that was something that, even for me, who I think that I'm pretty in tune with DEI work, and I try to, be in that mindset all the time. Like, that was something that was huge for me. And so I thank you for sharing that, because it's definitely something I hadn't considered. And I think around the return to work, what I've tried to have the discussion with my team is that, we've all been through a traumatic experience together, right? Like, we are not the same people that we were entering COVID. And I remember that day when we went home and we were like, we'll be back in a couple of weeks, and here we are. And I'm not the same person. And there's good and bad to that. But I think it's so important for DEI to be included in that conversation when we're thinking about, mothers and parents that are working from home. I got to meet your lovely daughter virtually yesterday, and I don't know, I could not have done this with children in the home. And so I applaud parents and teachers that have been through this. And anyway, so a couple of questions that we do want to get to. One, I think, is the first one's pretty easy. What is the name of the online tool that can be utilized for job descriptions and checking for DEI? And if that's not something you have readily available, we can send that out afterward. But that was the first question.
Let's send that one out after. I've got it saved as like a bookmark. So
perfect. Okay, yeah, we can send that out as a follow-up. And then one other question is, from your perspective, how has DEI impacted productivity and profitability for organizations?
Immensely. Again, when someone feels welcome, respected, supported, valued, to be their full self at work, they're giving their full 100%. Right. So if I'm able to focus on the work, I'm not having to focus on making people feel comfortable with my differences. I'm not focused on trying to make people feel comfortable around me. You're right. You're not in your head overthinking. You're not, as well as maybe getting up from your desk and thinking about how you might have to schmooze or connect with people so that they feel, more comfortable with you. It's everything. Right? It's everything. If you feel you can just be you and let your guard down, you can focus on your work. Again, that's why I think some people enjoy working remote.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, you don't have to worry about all the politicking or things that are around you. But when employees feel their best self, they give their full self. And that's all the focus is on work, both versus focus on other things that have nothing to do with being productive. So it's hand in hand. That is the business imperative of diversity and inclusion. Right? Is that if your employees, you create an inclusive environment where people can be their full self, they'll give you their full self, they give you 100% of themselves, they'll be focused on the work, not focused on other things.
Yeah. And I think, Lisa, I want to be your best friend. I'm moving to Pasadena. Sorry, Chattanooga. No, I'm kidding. I think though, I've heard the full self aspect, and I've experienced it, myself as well, that I'm able to bring my full self to work, but I haven't thought about it in the context of not not having to focus on that and truly focusing on being able to do the work and being able to do my job and not having to apologize or explain away who I am or what I look like or what I believe. I mean, I think that there's so much power in that. And I think, Lauren and his team have done a great job in articulating the return on investment for DEI work for businesses. And I think that, the reason that we're doing sessions like today is to help employers understand that this isn't, not only is it the right thing to do, right? I mean, we can say that and that this is the right thing to do, but there is a business case for diversity and inclusion work. And what you said, I think, is a huge part of that in terms of how your employees are able to show up every day, how they're able to be productive and all of those things. And so I appreciate it. I don't see any other questions, and so I think we're getting close to time. But Llisa, any closing comments before we kick it back over to Lauren to close us out?
Yeah, I did want to add one other thing about the profitability and productivity is that also, again, when we think about decisions that are being made for an organization, it's important to have a diverse group of people to be part of that decision making as well, so that, all people's experiences or potential paths that maybe the company might go, the more people with diverse views and backgrounds and experiences, the more you have to weigh in on making the decision, right? So there's a great story about Kodak. Does everyone remember Kodak? Maybe certain age you don't.
I do.
Right. So I was like, I remember uploading my pictures onto the Kodaks, like they had like a website that was sort of like their evolution. But
I remember getting film processed for the record.
The disposable cameras, just different kind of camera. Of course, putting in film. Oh, I totally remember it. But what happened to Kodak, right? Kodak just kind of went away when they were everything. And so they had some young people on their team that were talking about the evolution of like digital and, cameras and all of these things. But Kodak was just like, nope, we're going to stick right here with just our good old film, our disposable cameras and all these things. And it didn't work. Things evolved. Photos, cameras came on phones and they weren't really a part of any of that. And people now they're gone. Right. So, or they're focused on something completely different. So, and that was a huge brand and a huge part of the way people captured memories. And so when you don't think about what's next, or you have innovative people on your team or allow people the space to be innovative, they kind of self-imploded, right? Self-destruct. So that's just something to really think about. But yeah, let me see. Do we have like one more minute or no?
No, I think, we've got one more minute. You're fine. Yeah.
I was writing down a couple other notes and things that a question that you had proposed to me as well was just thinking about for a smaller organization that maybe is not able to do all of the things, doesn't have the resources or the people to do all of the work, or maybe they're not going to be able to hire. So how can they keep their employees growing and engaged? I think it's important for smaller employers to think about maybe special projects or stretch assignments that employees can be a part of, as well as conferences people can attend, ways that they can build their employees' expertise, right? So you still want to show your employee, I value you. Maybe we can't promote you at this time. Maybe, just the way the organizational structure is, that's just not a possibility, but I still want to help you grow and I want to build your expertise, right? Maybe also rotational development assignments where people do rotation through different areas of the business.
I love that idea.
As well as, of course, also money, good raises, good bonuses, extra days off. Those are things I think to think about as well. And frequent recognition, that's something that I don't see a lot of. Before moving to Chattanooga, I was an HR manager for Target and recognition was everything. And the employer I went to, there wasn't really a lot of recognition and I was shocked. And frequent recognition, individual and team, right? It could be all sorts of things. Some people want to be shout from the roof, Miles did this amazing thing. Some people just want to thank you, a pat on the back or a handwritten note. And some people are like, I want to lunch, throw me a party.
So it goes a long way. It really does. Yeah.
More than just the birthday cake, right? Let's have some nice lunch spread, some tzatziki's.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
When I was in Chattanooga. But just, things to think about like that. So frequent recognition, or giving your employees opportunity to be in something like Leadership Chattanooga or Inclusion by Design. Like just thinking of, if you can't promote your employees, if you can't, do all of these things, you can't hire a lot, you just got to work with what you've got, find other ways to help them just build on what they do have and where they are. And our employees, I think, always, they just want to work for someone that is engaging and inspiring.
Mhm.
So, if you keep them, wanting to work for you because of who you are and what you do, that goes a long way more than just a title for some people.
Mhm.
Title, like for me, I'm like, for a title, I'm like, okay, I like money, but I also want to work for feel like I'm doing something, like I'm making a difference, which is how I kind of ended up in all the moves I did for my careers. That I'm like, I feel like I'm not seeing like the fruits of my labor. Like I want to
Oh,
see change. I want to see that I'm making an impact. So that's where I've
impactful.
always been. Right. So that's something for, I think, smaller employers to think about is what do you have access to? What can you do for your employees? It's really important.
Great. Well, I
So maybe
think that
what else?
we have about 4 minutes. So there's
Someone
one.
just asked a question. I was going to say, I don't know if you want to see it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it
Oh,
says, can you recommend a succession plan toolkit? And if there is something that we can send out afterward, we can also do that unless you have something quickly that you want to speak to.
a succession plan toolkit.
Yes.
I'm not sure I really understand, like for,
It just says, can you recommend a succession plan toolkit? I'm assuming that they're referencing back to what we mentioned in
Mhm.
assessing diversity, but also when you're planning your succession plan, any tools that may exist that would be able to help with that.
I'll have to look up and see. Mine are, I like, literally, when I was working at Target, when I tell you succession planning was my life, it was my life. And so, I mean, at all levels, at the first line level supervisor and at managers, managing managers, that I did succession planning for both. And so, I'll look for a toolkit, or if they want to, I'll look to see. But I mean, I've got in my mind, like, kind of, I think, standard good ways from my experience and working at Target. I don't know if they want to reach out to me, or like if that's okay, to talk. But in terms of follow up, I'll look for.
Okay, and we can also provide your information, and this information will be shared for everyone, and the presentation, as well as I think how to get in touch with you. And
Okay.
Llisa, I can't thank you enough for your time today. This has been incredible, and we appreciate you, your partnership. While you're not in Chattanooga anymore, it's obvious that you are still providing so much value to your community and continue to our community. And so thank you so much for being here and for taking the very early part of your morning to be with us.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
And Lauren, I think we will kick it back over to you. Thank you all again for joining us, and we will talk to you all again very soon.
Thank you both, guys. Lisa, that was a very powerful presentation. Miles, thank you very much for leading that discussion. I can't begin to tell you guys, I'm writing notes feverishly here, trying to make sure I capture everything. This has been great information. Again, I just want to thank you all again for being here and taking the time to be with us. Elisa, again, thank you very much. Just as a quick reminder, this particular forum is being recorded and will be available for access after today. So if you have friends and colleagues who probably would benefit from the content, please don't hesitate to come to our website to get access to that information. And then there's also other ways for which you can get involved with this process, involved with the work that we engaged in. Just to give you a heads up in terms of what's coming up, upcoming events, the Chamber, part of my work is leading a DEI advisory, and part of that advisory is going to be lifting up certain topics, one of which we were talking about was talent diversity today. We're also going to look very closely at procurement. And then the third, of course, the significance of communication and its manifestation around DEI. And one of the things I want to take away from so much that was said by Lisa, one of the things that really resonated too is, again, that business case for both productivity and profitability. If you look at some of the things that Lisa spoke to, if you're touching on those particular items as you're looking at your talent development, talent retention, they're critical with regards to productivity and profitability. And not being lost in that discussion, of course, was just touching on the significance of the pandemic and is how it's changed all of our work lives. So again, Lisa, thank you very much. I also just wanted to touch base in terms of what you can expect or anticipate going forward. As we're beginning to further develop the work, we're looking at a briefing that looks a little bit more closely. We had a national organization recently published a report that looks a little bit more closely at the business case of racial equity within companies, and then how to elevate that from a standpoint of, again, profitability and also productivity. And then finally, next to last, we can anticipate, or you can anticipate, another installment of the DEI Forum, probably looking at sometime in November, so stay tuned for that. And finally, I just want to say that we released the CEO pledge for racial equity, roughly about 85 signatures. So you corporations, please sign on to that. It's going to be a very powerful guide as we continue to build economy and expand opportunity here in the city of Chattanooga and in Hamilton County. And I'll be remiss if I did not take a moment to send out a special thank you to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. They have been a great sponsor for this particular series. Again, it has provided us a means by which to share some very powerful information as we look at this very important topic. Having said that, if any of you have questions or follow-up and you need to reach someone here at the chamber, I can be reached at lsteedley, LSTEEDLEY, at ChattanoogaChamber.com. So again, thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.